morning. Welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. We're always with you now. We're hoping we'll be with you to the end. And we hope the end is a long, long, long way off because we pushed the envelope just that little bit further and put mud in their eye. Many things happening in the big city of Toronto. You think nothing else was going on in the world except our mayor being barbecued by the corporate media all over the planet Earth, pretty much. He's a very popular boy. So if I was going to draw a political cartoon for poor Mayor Rob Ford, accused of being in a video that no one's seen except a few reporters for the media, that kind of imply he was smoking a crack pipe, even though the pipe probably didn't talk, I would paint the mayor as Caesar in the Senate. And we all remember what happened to Caesar. He was stabbed brutally to death by the senators. But in this, it would be a reverse. All the senators would be dead, and Mayor Ford would be standing in the middle as Caesar with a knife in his hand, saying, "There is no video." And of course, anyone that asks is dead. All of his staff, 2 more staff were released today and escorted out the door. Arrivederci, goodbye. The story's building up into mega proportions for our mega mayor, mostly because he's allowing this crisis to grow. And I remembered a small little story on the side from a couple of years ago where, Mayor Ford, he's always in trouble. Like the week before your smoking crack thing, he's putting fridge magnets on people's cars. What a sin. Vote for Rob Ford. Those would probably be quite the collector's items. Maybe they had scratch and sniff drugs on them or something. But I remember a small little story where the city had like a little piece of land, like a green belt space behind his backyard. And he wanted to buy it and get control of this because they were going to do some kind of excavating work, and he didn't want that done, so he actually wanted to buy an easement on the park property. And they wouldn't sell it to him, but he was really hot and bothered about that. Well, knowing now that, there's like bodies buried in his closet or backyard or something, I think, that channel should be like Gawker and just start collecting all kinds of money so that we could get ground penetrating radar and just, sneak up to the fence line and just see if there's, any bones left over from the Dark Ages. We do things much better here at that channel. That's why you have to come to Conspiracy Cafe. That's why you have to come to this host, George Freund, for this show, because we cut the mustard. One of the big things happening, a couple of big things happening. Agent 99 was quick to remind me tomorrow, so we might not be able, if you're watching the show live, that's probably a good thing, just in case, but this asteroid, large asteroid here, is 1998 QE2, is supposed to come really close by Earth tomorrow, so if it hits us, which it isn't supposed to, but just say, something shifted in the universe somehow and we took a good shot, well, we might not be able to watch the replay on this show tomorrow, so, we're going to have to get it live tonight, but that's one of the big things. It's supposed to be 3.6 million miles from Earth. Nice little number there, 3 sixes. They always like to do those numbers. But we'll see what happens. Another shot across the bow. There were shots across the bow a long time ago, too, back in 1916. A lot of people probably don't remember things like that because they're all dead. But what happened way back then was the Battle of Jutland, May 31st. Between the Germans and the British, probably one of the greatest naval battles in human history. It's a shame we always have to settle everything with battles, but it was inconclusive about who won. The British and the Germans both took a horrendous loss of life and ships and went home to lick their wounds. This is the map of where it happened. Admiral Jellicoe was one of the big British admirals at the time. Admiral Scheer, Admiral Hipper for the Germans, Admiral Beatty was the other admiral for the British, and basically they invented a maneuver called crossing the T, where the British sailed in front, flip to me there, sailed in front of the German fleet, blasting them with their broadsides, while the Germans could only shoot forward to a limited degree, and that's probably why they did as well as they did. But again, horrible loss of life, horrible tragedies, these wars. The whole purpose of World War I was to build the New World Order, of course. So you had competing monarchies fighting amongst each other to see who's going to be the Antichrist or the head of Europe. Same thing, I guess. Nothing's changed. But the old monarchies, the Germans, the Russians, the Turkish, and the Emperor of Austria-Hungary had to be swept aside because they probably all wanted to rule the world too. And that left the British monarchy and the military-industrial complex of the United States and other parts of Europe to have a new world order, until they ran into the Hitler guy who wasn't accepting their version of the new world order, according to Winston Churchill, and then we had to do it again. And again and again and again and again. It's an amazing world we live in. Then, of course, one of the other big stories here in Canada, you know, it's another sad one to a degree, I guess. Depends on which side you're on. It's a controversial life, a controversial story. Is Henry Morgentaler, Canada's noted abortionist, passed away at age 90. I had the, I guess you can't use some of the words you generally use and stuff like that, but I was assigned to be his bodyguard a long time ago when he was going to speak in the GTA, and you know, I was a policeman then. I had to pick him up at the train station and take him to his rendezvous to speak and be his bodyguard for an evening. And you know, he didn't really impress me all that much. You just have this you know, dark karma evil. One of the big things that we have in the politically correct era of whatever era we're in is we can justify all our crimes through the courts and through popular opinion and say it's okay. So a long time ago you were black, you were a slave, you weren't a human being. And then later somebody figured that out was a mistake. And it wasn't good to kill them black people anymore and whip them and beat them and all that. So we got to find somebody new. There's always got to be. But then, you know, of course, they always did the Indians. They probably weren't described as human beings under the law, too, and they treat them like horrible. And then later you realize you made a mistake, but you can't bring the dead back to life. And then, you know, well, I guess we did it to women, too, and then they got rights and became persons. You see, before they weren't persons in the law. So you could kind of own a few, whip them and beat them and, you know, whatever you want. They couldn't vote or have rights and stuff like that. And then later, as we progressed and advanced in humanity, then it was those dirty, evil Jews that we had to get rid of. See, they weren't people either. And then we grew out of that. And then we go, well, who else can we kill? Well, let's get unborn baby fetuses. They can't sue us and take us to court. They haven't popped out yet. So generally I look at that as a, you know, a latent day modern genocide, but I do agree, you know, a woman has to have rights over her own body. Those reproductive rights start before you have sex. After you have sex, you have responsibilities. But I'm a Christian, I'm different, and I couldn't, you know, like a lot of these people who believe in abortion and all that kind of stuff, they just say, you know, that's all well and good. You clean up the mess. Here's the little tools. You stick them in there, cut the little sucker up, bring out the pieces, throw them on the floor, sweep them up later. You do it. And see how you feel, if that's a human life or not. I think you'd probably have a, you know, different point of view on a lot. That's the same thing, like everybody eats meat pretty much. But you say, here's a little bunny rabbit, and here's a straight razor. Put it in the soup. A lot of people probably going to say, you know, I think I'm going to skip my lunch today. Well, if somebody else kills it, well, maybe I'll eat it, but I don't feel like that myself. And that's just the way the world works. One of the big stories, I posted this on our website. I guess I can find that here to click up and show you where to find it, conspiracy-cafe.com. So you go down here in the front where it's got podcasts, and there's a big story down there that Joyce Riley did on the Power Hour about weather modification with, you know, her expert guest there. So, you know, we use this picture, I've used this before just because it looks good. Weather made to order. Her guest, James McCanney, spoke for 2 hours. So that's a good thing. And then, of course, I guess we'll go back here and go to the other show. We got a good picture for that one, too. This is the second hour. I like this one. InfoWars came up with this one where we can have the new video game for the president where you can move storms there. So, you know, it's not like he's the first guy, right? Like, you know, Bush kind of hit New Orleans with a hurricane. You know, why can't we steer a tornado maybe and just kind of like drive it into a place called Moore, which nobody knows where it is too much except the people that live there, flatten it, and guess what happens? Everybody forgot about Benghazi. Like, it just disappeared. Well, in Toronto, everything disappeared because we only got one thing to talk about, Mayor Ford. Like, the whole city could be swallowed in an apocalyptic nightmare. But none of the mainstream media would cover this or that or anything else. The only thing that matters is Mayor Ford. I looked at that a lot as, you know, at first, at the very least, option one, it's a coup d'etat by the media to take out the mayor because they don't like him, and that's still a possibility. Option two, as we get up to a higher level, was to say that he's being used as cover fire to cover for the Progressive Conservative Federal Party here in Canada that kind of lost $3.1 billion in terror money somewhere. And then, of course, they, you know, asked them, like, how could that happen? And
that was easy.
And they get a response. And the Minister of Money Laundering, and nobody knows who he is, but, you know, I got a good idea, sort of, almost, you know, probably shuffled that stuff offshore really, really well, and we'll never see it again. But there was some strange things that happened in Moore, and we have a little video about that. It was really funny because I saved this video so that I could use it for today, right? So I got it all saved, the article, it's all there. You know, watched it last night. This is perfect. UFOs were seen flying in the local newscast. So you watch the local newscast and you see these little orbs going around and going, hey, this is perfect. I go back to the article, because I saved the article as opposed to the specific YouTube, and they're gone. You know, it's like, wait a minute. So then, you know, I got a rough idea what I'm looking for, but I don't have the computer I was using to go through the history to find out what I was looking at exactly. So fortunately, I found one, and it's there, and with Brother Hughes' opportunity here, we're going to show you the UFOs in Moore.
Now at 6 o'clock, we start with breaking news and live pictures from the plains. You're looking at Oklahoma right now, where a tornado is on the ground. Incredible pictures coming out from that area. This is in the Oklahoma City area. We also know of a developing situation in the Kansas City area, or Wichita, Kansas. So very serious situation. We're, of course, tracking it right here in the 24-hour tracking center, not only because this is a huge national story, but also for the impacts it'll have here in West Michigan. This is major.
This massive system, which is producing these supercell thunderstorms, long track, big tornadoes, this whole system itself is going to migrate over the Great Lakes over the next couple of days. Now, good news is every indication this is going to weaken, and we're not going to see storms like what we're seeing in the south here, but our severe weather chance is definitely elevated over the next couple of days, and we just saw that video out of Oklahoma with that tornado on the ground. This is the kind of day where we have the environment and the setup for big, long track, EF4, EF5 even possible tornadoes. And you look at a wedge tornado like this, Leon, there's no question this is causing incredible damage on the ground. Speaking of Wichita, Kansas, they had their first tornado emergency of the year with a major supercell thunderstorm producing a large wedge tornado that moved through the south side of the metro there in Wichita, Kansas. So a devastating day for severe weather down to our south. And again, the reason this is so important for us and the reason we're tracking this so carefully is this complex is going to be moving slowly off to the north and east, and we have our shot at severe weather coming up here tomorrow, also Tuesday and Wednesday. You can see the view here on Storm Track Live. We are high and dry across West Michigan, and that's good news, but big thunderstorms have erupted here across the Central Plains, the Great Plains states, all the way from northern Oklahoma in through much of eastern Kansas. This is a shift of about 200 miles east from where we had the tornado outbreaks yesterday. They were in western Nebraska and western Kansas, and now we're monitoring this line for supercell thunderstorm and long track tornado development. A dangerous situation here down to our south. And again, not these particular cells, but this whole complex is going to be coming our way over the next.
Oh, that was interesting. No wonder that video disappeared. You can't see those little spots floating around anywhere, you know. Got to hide that. We don't hide it here. We show it to you pie in the face to whoever our little UFO friends are, the ETs, or is that some sort of military technology? I'm sure we've got some flying saucers underground that we can use at the, you know, various complexes across New Mexico and stuff like that to kind of spice up the storm, make it a little better, steer it, direct it, flatten some stuff. And then our good buddy Obama, you know, he does what he does best. I don't know if I saved that part to look at there. Where are we? Yeah, there we go. Because every time one of these big things happens, and you know, we think we got some, you know, major crisis or something, we get one of these shots there. This is the same ones they had when they had the hurricane go through New England. Is Obama comes for the big hug. There we go, and everything's forgotten. There's no more Benghazi. There's no more anything.
That was easy.
And we change the channel just like that. And we don't even think about what happened before. And Obama, he's the hero, you know. And the military-industrial complex, well, they flatten everything, and nobody understands the 21st, 2nd, 3rd, or any kind of advanced technology. We just play with blocks and look at reality TV. That's reality right there. You know, and then he goes around getting some gray hair now. You know, they always leave with gray hair. And the tear. See, he's like the, you know, the Pharaoh guy. You know, he puts the finger in the eye to get the tear. That's, you know, a classic little bit of body language to tell us who he's really working for. So then we had this Monsanto protest. It was good. There was something like 200,000 activists getting out in 6 continents, 40 nations, 48 U.S. states. Chicago, Montreal, Berlin, Paris, Brussels, Moscow, Melbourne, even little small town Ontario's, because they had a great website that you could click on your little town and show up and jump up and down against Monsanto. But maybe that's not going to be allowed too soon, because the Congress passed the Monsanto Protection Act that allows Monsanto and other companies that use GMOs to plant and sell genetically altered products, even if legal action is taken against them. That sounds like kind of weird. It was authored by a senator who had received thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from Monsanto. And then, of course, you could take it to the courts, but then this guy here, Justice Clarence Thomas, the attorney for the corporation, was nominated to the Supreme Court. Yeah. Okay. And then they got Monsanto CEO Hugh Grant saying, you know, this is all terrible. Like, this stuff is so good. It dissolves your organs. You'll never reproduce. What more could you want? And then, of course, one of the big billionaires in the States came out, Gina Reinhardt. It's almost like a good German name, you know. We have to sterilize the inferior species. Don't you understand? They reproduce and make useless eaters that we have to feed. Well, we heard that once before, like before World War II. Oh well, so Monsanto's ready for World War III because they're hiring Blackwater, which is now Z Services, and then some other intelligence arm called Total Intelligence, and they volley back and forth about if they work for Monsanto or they work for, you know, Blackwater as Z or whoever the hell they are, so that they can have an intelligence agency to spy on you and Blackwater guys to beat you up. And then we find out one of the biggest investors in this is Bill Gates. Controls 90% of the market share of proprietary computing, and Monsanto about 90% of the global transgenic seed market and most global commercial seed. Former Secretary of Health Julio Frank and Ernesto Zedillo are advisors to the foundation. Gates is trying to destroy rural farming worldwide. It's a Trojan horse to deprive poor African farmers of their traditional seeds, replacing them with the new and improved genetically modified seeds. The foundation hired Robert Horsch in 2006. That's the Gates Foundation, who was formerly with Monsanto. And so you like genetically modified products because you realize too that you're a useless eater. You don't want to be on this planet anymore. You want to do those billionaires a favor. You don't want to ask them questions. You don't want to be sovereign. You don't want to enjoy your children. You don't want to reproduce. The whole concept of a lot of what we're facing today was covered in a report to the Club of Rome, one of those like global think tanks. It's called RIO, Reshaping the International Order. Love that word order. Anytime you see that, you don't get fries, you get fried. The international order. As soon as I read that, it's simple. I can sum it up in a couple of sentences. There's too many people, there's not enough food, we're all going to die, we got to make some drastic decisions. Ergo, we force all kinds of things on you that stop you from reproducing. Abortion, putting chemicals in our food to maybe turn us homosexual, or in the environment, killing us prematurely, whatever it takes. And we beg them for it because we think they're doing us a favor by giving us something that we really want. cancer. So Adam Kokesh is out of jail. We posted a video for him, cancels his D.C. march. So, you know, we got that God bless America, because we have to bless America, and God does that. The Second Amendment is your God-given right. You shouldn't have to have a permit or a license from the government to have a God-given right, because it's given you from God. It's free. You don't need that crap. And like all rights, if you don't use them, you lose them. So Kokesh was quite right to take this protest to Washington, because that is the capital of the corporation, I mean the country, and to show them that we have these God-given rights. Actually, it might have started the, you know, the next American Civil War. Probably wouldn't last long, because the people outnumber them, you know, significantly to 1. And just clean all the buggers out, hang the traitors, and start over. Because we, the people, that's them, the Americans, are the government. Even here in Canada, we are the government. The people are supposed to be the government. The executive, the Congress, Parliament, the courts, they're supposed to be our servants, not our masters, but they've set themselves up to be our masters, and the masters have sold the farm to the corporations, and the corporations are intent to kill us all. Of course, that's why they need the Second Amendment. So on the 4th of July, well, if you can't go to Washington, because Kokesh probably got, you know, the treatment in the jail or something like that, and, you know, he's not going to lead this march. And you got to worry about people who say, oh, it's an ambush, it's a trap, it's a this, it's a that. That's like, you know, Paul Revere is running down the road. The British are coming, the British are coming. And somebody else is coming by in a horse going, it's a trap, it's a trap, don't go, it's a trap, you're going to get hurt. You can probably reason that out. Somebody's not telling the truth. You see, because if it went off, those guys would be gone. If nothing happens, they stay. So a lot of alternative media who say they're alternative media are dropping the ball on this one. See, you got the Second Amendment march. See, I got to trim that picture down because it wouldn't fit. But you get the idea, you know, the Minuteman guy and all that kind of stuff. And then this one was kind of cute, kind of came up in the same search thing. 2 things every American should know how to use: a gun and the Bible, neither of which are taught in the schools. And that's quite correct. They just don't teach those things in the school. So what did Kokesh say before they turned him in jail? It says, when a government has repeatedly and deliberately failed to follow its own laws, violated the fundamental rights of its citizens, threatened the sanctity of a free press, created institutions intended to eliminate privacy of communication, waged war at the behest of special interests that threatens the public's safety, killed hundreds of children with drone strikes, imprisoned and destroyed the lives of countless individuals for victimless crimes, stifled economic opportunity to maintain the dominance of the financial elite, stolen from the people through an absurd system of taxation and inflation, sold future generations into debt, slavery, and abused its power to suppress political opposition. It is unfit to exist, and it becomes the duty of the people to alter or abolish that government by whatever means necessary to secure liberty and ensure peace. A new American revolution is long overdue. Well, you're not getting that in Washington on July the 4th, so the backup plan is wherever you are, whatever you can do. Forget the fireworks. That's for children. You're adults now, and teach your children too. Go on a Second Amendment march. You got the day off anyway, and whatever town square you got, you just show up, pack in the heat you're authorized to heat, and get people used to the fact that there ain't nothing wrong with that. An armed society is a civil society. So whether that's at state capitals that they're recommending, or whether that's your local town square or something like that, it's probably a good pool. It's like you say, if you don't use your rights, you lose your rights. And once you lose that right, well, let's just say things are going to be very, very different for you, because they want to change a lot of things. So 2 U.S., this is one of the stories, you know, if it bleeds, it leads or something like that. But 2 U.S. embassy employees were shot in Caracas, Venezuela. And that's not the picture I want. That one's not good enough. Well, I guess it is good enough. But this is the club here, the Antonella 2012 in Caracas. And you see they got this sign here, you know, no guns. But I guess they obeyed the rule, because the diplomatic employees who are military attaches at the Venezuelan embassy were shot outside, 3 of them in total. So this is the club. And then I guess this is good for ratings, get you into the club, and you know, the boys will watch the show or something like that. So it's pretty much a front for prostitution, and all kinds of, you know, bountiful young maidens go dancing around with not too much. And well, that one's from Colombia, so we can't count her anymore. And that's what you're faced with here. So Roberto Esquivel Rosas and Paul Marwin were shot. They're in stable condition. The club is also known as Angelus. A fight ensued outside, and two of these guys got plugged. One was shot in the abdomen, one in the leg or something like that. But they mentioned, like, you know, Caracas isn't the nicest place in town. So, you know, one of the doormen or something goes into it. Like, this place has got like the highest murder rate in the world pretty much. It's like 50 per 100,000. They don't keep records and they don't tell you about crime. And it could be as high as 70 per 100,000. They banned guns last year, so that didn't really make a dent in things. So, you know, the doorman says, you know, he went home, 2 people were shot in front of his house, and nobody came. Saw a man killed right in front of his house. Says it's worse than Afghanistan. Highest crime rates in the world, and nobody releases this stuff. Costa Rican attaché was kidnapped for ransom. Mexico's ambassador and his wife were abducted. The Chilean consul was shot and wounded by kidnappers. Dozens of cases have been reported in the past 2 years. So there's something like 3,000 kidnappings every year, more than Mexico and Colombia. Then the other thing was that, you know, none of the other media mentioned too much is there was a third guy, you know, there as well. He didn't get shot, so he kind of swept off the news. So the president of Venezuela launches a security drive to put soldiers on the street, and it really doesn't do anything. So, because it's like any time there has to be a crime, you know, the video cameras don't work, the cops aren't there, the army isn't there, like they're good at it. Like the big heading in London, you know, like it's the most cameraed country in the world, right? Orwell couldn't even speculate how many cameras there were. And it took like forever for the cops to come, you know, because everybody's watching TV. Maybe there was one of those, you know, girls in the bikinis going somewhere, and every copper was focused in on that one, and nobody was watching the other 25,000 cameras. But one thing about the girls of the evening is they know what's going on. They get all the secrets. One of the big one, economic indicator that doesn't end up in the business section too long, was the prostitutes are going out of business in jolly old England. They can't pay their rents and they can't pay their energy bills. It's almost impossible to make a living. The market is saturated with so many people getting into the trade because they don't have any money. So they keep cutting the prices. It doesn't work. But what they say in the article is consumer spending over last year has dropped 4%. 2 to 3 customers a day compared to like 8 or 9. So that tells us the economy's falling off to some degree. And then on the you know, the larger end with, you know, London's big phallic symbol, the Shard, where the lights are on, well, that's kind of where the building's occupied. So you can see most of it isn't occupied. So just 6 of its 72 floors are actually occupied. Some of the important ones are up on the roof where there's a restaurant and a tower to look at stuff, so they charge you 25 pounds to go up to the top to have a peek around and such like that. But, you know, nobody's really even coming close. 500 million pound building, stunning views, no customers. The rents are obscene. That's probably got a lot to do with it. Or maybe just people don't like the fact that, you know, it's a Middle Eastern country that really built this thing for them. And for whatever reason, they're not too keen to support the oil money. Canada Square took 15 years to fill when they built that in 1991. But that's another economic indicator that kind of shows us things aren't going too well. Another one here for, you know, Ontario people is called OMERS, the Ontario Municipal Pension Plan. Had a $10 billion funding deficit. And then back a little while before that, they had a $7.3 billion funding deficit for 2011. They started adding that together, like $17 billion in the hole in 2 years. That's pretty tough. So they're looking at stuff where they're going to increase your contribution rate. They call it the multiplier rate from 1.85% to 2%. Doesn't really bother the employees that have been in it for a while, but the new guys will have to pay with more kidneys and blood or something like that, or make you work longer. So you have to be in the pension plan 38 years instead of 35 to get the full pension. That's not too good. In Britain, they got lots of people dying. Thousands of people die in hospitals because there's too few doctors to look at them. It's like, well, you fill this room up with like 50 patients that are all critical and need immediate attention, and there's just you to be the doctor. Well, that's not good enough. Maybe he's only going to be able to do 2 or 3, and the rest of them, well,
That was easy.
they die. Just like that. Because that's the whole part and parcel. They don't want you to live to get these pensions. They don't want you to live at all. One of the things that's coming very, very drastically, and this is, from a website, this is like a banned website. They're in more trouble than we are. Survival blog. It's like 2 dirty words in there at once. Like, you're not supposed to survive. You're supposed to die. Why America's next bank holiday will be a nightmare. So we're on the brink of this financial crisis. It'll be worse than 2008. A lot of people don't even know what a bank holiday is, even though it's been well publicized in the world's media from this crisis we had in Crete. Printed U.S. currency and minted coins is less than $800 billion. The aggregate money zero maturity money supply exceeds $7 trillion. So that's like, the casino money. So if you have to rob Peter to pay Paul, Peter don't have enough. And then the system shuts down. So they say 20 things that could happen here in your survival blog that you should anticipate is the bank holiday. Virtual blackout on information. No checking or savings accounts or automated mortgage payments. Well, if you don't have to pay anything, I guess that's a good thing, but the trouble is no incoming either. Your bank balance will be invisible. The use of checks will disappear in a day or less because you just can't get them cashed anywhere. So that'll be the end of it. Most businesses will no longer honor them. Even bank money orders won't be honored. All checks in the U.S. are cleared through the automatic clearinghouse. The European ones go through the pan-European clearinghouse. Credit cards will not be accepted. Anything peripherally related to the debits or the banking system will disappear. Social Security payments through direct deposit will disappear. Military pays, direct deposits, any kind. State and municipal employees won't get paychecks because everything's that way. Debit cards won't work. ATMs might be limited or they'll just be cleaned out within minutes. PayPal will be degraded because the ultimate end is something comes into a bank account. Regular monthly payments will come to a screeching halt. Swift wire transfers will probably be suspended, freezing a good portion of global commerce. Credit card payments will be dubious. Many merchants will wisely just say no. Or as they used to say in the old days, like cash and carry. POP, processing of credit and debit cards at gas stations, will become ubiquitous. Cash transactions only. They do recommend that maybe you get a gas card for a specific gas company, so that way it's their system. They may honor the debt on their own system. No food stamps. No electronic benefit transfer card payments. Gift cards will be iffy. Expect riots in less than a week. Mail order forms will cease operations. U.S. postal money orders will be a possible viable solution. But you can't take your stamps back to the post office because of hygiene regulations, unless they're in their original packaging. And then pretty much forget about safe deposit boxes because they're in the banks and the banks are going to be closed. The dollars check in. They call the banks the Roach Hotel in this, but they don't check out for a significant period of time. If this European credit problem spreads to the United States, which is virtually assured because they're working so hard to take away the firewalls that protect us by bringing in this European Union free trade zone that all our traders are working so hard to bring about. We talked about Ed Fast in a previous show, our Minister of Trade here in Canada, that nobody knows anything about. That's the guy whose ass should be on the fire in the newspapers every day. Fast Eddie. Like Ford's just a walking idiot. Whether he smoked crack or not, isn't going to change my life one way or another, I can assure you, or anybody else really in the city. To be perfectly honest with you, I think they should legalize drugs and just get this all out of the way. Because it defies the laws of economic supply and demand. There's nothing you can do to ban anything. So try to regulate it, control it, or tax it to some degree instead of hanging me by the ankles for all kinds of stupid laws they pass. And let's just learn to live with it like we did with alcohol after Prohibition. They do highly recommend that you have a stash of cash and maybe keep it on small bills, because nobody's going to be able to make change either. If you have to go to do something, especially in the United States where, you know, you do have some open carry laws and stuff like that, go in groups so somebody's guarding you while you're doing your cash transaction. As soon as you turn your back to whip out that wallet, there's going to be like 10 people on top of you like glue to get that last dollar, because they don't have anything. So when the Federal Reserve cranks up again with the printing presses, the people who never believed you before are going to believe you like you would never ever think, because they had to do without for as long as it takes. So there's not enough money that they could ever make, because people are going to want to stash cash. So they expect huge dollar deflation, with a multiplier effect of every dollar or deposit will work in reverse as withdrawals are made. When you see signs of mass inflation, spend it fast, because it'll be worthless within hours or maybe the next day. And then these guys here at Survival Blog, like, they were hunted down by the FBI. Anyone who doesn't want to go with the Fuhrer, Obama, has to be hunted down. They got caught in the IRS trick, but so the FBI hunts down this website. They had to move to Sweden. So the FBI put cookies on their thing so that if you visit the site, they follow you away and see where you go. You know, cyberspace surveillance. Like, where the hell do they think you're going to go? Where could you possibly go in cyberspace that, you know, it's just, they got to spy on you and keep records for that. Every terror event's been a false flagger. They already know who those guys are. This is the biggest waste of time and money that ever came along. But what these guys recommend, though, is their website has an IP address, which is like your computer number. So even if they fudge it up so you can't put in the name Survival Blog and get their written address, if you put in the web IP number, it's like your direct phone line, you should access them. It just shows you how evil they are. They're trying to tell you how to survive while the government's trying to destroy you in any way possible. One of the big ones that happened in England, a lot of Americans I don't think covered this as much because the false flaggers happen all over the time, was the street theater in Woolwich. So as soon as it happened, at first you're kind of like, ooh, that's, you know, that's awful. You know, look at the horrible thing these people did or something like that. And then you start to look at it and you look at some of the fine details or whatever, and you realize this is a fraud. This is street theater. So seemingly this friendly guy, Michael, and his other colleague, Michael, grabbed a soldier, they hit him with a car, drag him into a corner, and they put the meat cleaver and a knife, a machete, or whatever it was, into the guy, kill him, drag his body into the street, and then they have to make political statements to tell everyone why they did it, and shout Allah Akbar. Well, God is great, that's a given, but this is some pretty nasty business. So right away I see the fraud, because you just look at these guys like, who's going to be hanging around? So in the blog, you know, we have a link to an article by a British detective inspector of firearms, Peter Kirkham, who said, you know, in his entire career, he's never seen anything like this before, and he's never heard of anything like this before. Well, there's a reason for that. It was made up. So one of the things that, you know, really make us think that it was made up. So we did the video last year about, you know, how I think it was the Discovery Channel had this documentary on how to hypnotize people, and this guy commits a murder. And they had to turn him on, and they had to know that he was turned on, because, you know, he's going to kill somebody. You got to know when to give him the pistol. If you give him the pistol and he's not turned on, he says, what are you doing that for? I'm not going to shoot. You got to make sure that he's working, right? So the thing that they did is they made the guy touch his forehead, and then they knew he was turned on. And then you could go through with the thing they did. And it worked. Well, here's this guy. He's in a, you know, like, I just hacked up a guy with a meat cleaver and dragged his body into the street and just let me, and he's halfway putting that finger on his forehead. And of course the Tavistock Institute is in London too, and they were specialists of Dr. Sigmund Freud, and they know all about, you know, mind control and how to use your brain to use it for other purposes. And then of course these hero women, you know, see, they jump off a bus and they come running to these guys, and you have to look at them to say, these are, you know, the hypnotist masters here to give the cue words, and, you know, they can't come out with the big card. What is it, the Queen of Diamonds, was it? From Manchurian? Wasn't it the Queen of Diamonds or whatever? Angela Lansbury with the big card, you know. Then it's a dead giveaway that you got a Manchurian. So they just walk up to him, and, you know, both these guys are, and they talk to him. And then in the picture, if you look really deep, there's these two guys in black suits in the back here, in the middle. This neighborhood don't wear suits, let me assure you. Who are they? Well, those are the high-end spooks, and these are the field agents who are controlling this guy. And then this is a good shot too. I didn't notice this at first until we saw this other video we got to show up. The sign, the street sign. See, when you see this car, right? Where's a picture of the car? Car's all smashed up. Just look at that. Tuned in the front end, man. Just like you drove it into a pole. And then in this one, there's the pole. So the guy does the video. The paint isn't even off the pole. There's no blood going into the streets. I've been to an attack like that. You know, guy went berserk. He was a carpet layer, cut up 3 people with a carpet knife, bashed somebody's head in with a hammer. The blood circle was way bigger than this car on the sidewalk from the guy who got his head bashed in with the hammer. He didn't die. Nobody died. But it was a hell of a mess. The guy was wearing coveralls. He was soaked in blood from the shoulders down to his hands, from the tops of his legs down to his feet, covered in blood. We saw him from, you know, a long way away down the street. My partner's looking at me going, that was in the old days when your partner wasn't the guy you have sex with, it was somebody you worked with. Just so we got that cleared up. Johnny and me were good buddies, but, you know, we didn't pull our pants down. And, you know, he's going, hey, man, look at the tie-dye job on this guy. And we're going like, wow, that's really weird. And then we go, hey, he's being followed by a fireman. And then, you know, astute observation, when do you ever see a fireman without a fire truck? Not too often. Johnny's got eyes like an eagle. He's right at the guy's got a hammer in his hand, man. There's hair on the hammer. We stop, jump out. He sees the guns. He's on the ground. Fireman tackles him down. Goodbye. We go to the crime scene. The police hadn't been there yet. We were just swarmed by every kid in the neighborhood. It was Sunday afternoon, sunny summer afternoon, and they're all over us. I don't think I've ever been squeezed so tight by so many kids at one time. Like they're grabbing your legs, my gun belt, and, you know, everything. Just holding on because they're terrified this guy's going to come back. Lots of blood. Blood everywhere. Except when you come out with a meat cleaver and a machete and you hack a British soldier to death. So, okay, he's dead. You're not going to pump blood while you're dead, but still there's 5 liters in there. Lots is going to leak out. And now this guy's got this. He had to take the coat off. He probably even realized, oh, shit, I forgot to take the coat off. The coat's tan colored. There's no blood stains on it. So he, in a second shot, you know, he ditched the thing. And you see the front end of the car there. She's smashed up really good. Not that pole. You know, if they made the World Trade Center out of poles like that, that baby never would have come down. So this is the guy they're alleged to have killed. Lee Rigby, British soldier. You wonder, did he know something back in the old country if they really did kill him, or is this all a complete stageroo? And then you see these women. Now, if you saw some guy walking down the street, and he's holding a meat cleaver in his hand, and bloods are dripping off him and everything like that, you know, you're just going to be going about your business to say, well, you know, I got to get to school, I got to get to work, you know, I got to go home and watch the children and stuff like that, and you just go sailing past here. Like, you know, you could go down this street here in the corner, up here by the woman there, and go around the block, right, make the little detour, stop by the gun store, pick up some ammunition, come back, you know, doesn't make sense. And then here, they just had a shootout. Those guys are dead in the street or wounded in the street, both Michaels or something like that. And everybody else is just standing around, you know, in the line of fire, sort of, like, you know, you're on a movie set. Maybe they are. And then this one's a dead giveaway, is the guy behind the scenes here, David Cameron. That picture really blows up big, man. I should have just cut his face out and put that in there. I mean, You look at that look of determination, like, I got it, I got it. I've turned it all around, I won, I've won. No one's ever going to say anything against the war in the Middle East. No one's ever going to look into my background about anything. No one's going to ask about the police state powers that I'm taking because they're begging me, holding on to my legs, begging me to take their freedoms away. Brilliant strategy. And then this one was on the front page of the Daily Mirror, and you see the cops rushing in, shooting this one meat cleaver maniac. Well, the other guy, he's got a pistol too, it says, right? Now this is the part don't makes any sense here. So the cops rush in on this guy. He's standing there pointing a gun at him. All three of these guys are pointing at a guy who's already decommissioned lying on the street. Now he's supposed to be a radical, nutbar, suicidal, horrible, jihadist, mercenary, crazy guy. Why didn't he shoot? Right? If you got three more for Allah, you could go Akbar 3 more times. But it doesn't happen. Nor do they, quickly turn on him. Then, of course, everybody's got a photographic memory that works in the media, and they remember that, hey, this guy was at a protest some years ago in 2007. We remember that. That was him. Well, how did you know unless you really knew him? That he was there protesting. And there's the face of terror. Everybody's terrified. Everybody thinks it's real. Everybody thinks it happened, and if you say anything different, they look at you like you fell down and hurt your head. So a guy who knew one of these Michaels says that they were working for the intelligence agencies. The intelligence agencies admit they were following these guys for years. But he said, no, it was more than that. So he goes to BBC Newsnight, that program that gets in real trouble. And he does an interview. And the anti-terror police come in and arrest him. Because they knew he was there. They followed him on his phone. He was offered a job, this guy said, 6 months ago with MI5. I think he took the money and the job. And then he changed. After a trip to Kenya, he was supposed to have been arrested for terrorism down there. Well, that's where the Americans did the embassy bombing. It was all an inside job, too. Even the New York Times covered that in a very long, detailed study I used years ago. There was a guy who went to the embassy every day until it happened. He couldn't go to the American embassy anymore. He had to go to the British embassy, saying, they're going to blow up the embassy. You got to do something. They didn't do anything. They kicked him out. They kept kicking him out. And then he got desperate. So getting close, I'll go to the British embassy. I'll tell them, they're going to blow up the embassy. You got to do something. Well, after it blew up, they arrested the guy. They did something. So he met this reporter, Richard Watson, was interviewed. They hauled the guy away, and now the media is kind of worried about, like, how does this affect free speech and the right of the news and all this kind of stuff. A lot. And then some other bloggers, did something that was pretty close and good to a lot of the stuff I did. We did that for the took me a long time to write that, for the We're Back Live Thursday thing. So hopefully we get there. So they picked out the pole too, that it's not damaged. There's a still shot of it. And then they found the chalk marks on the ground where you're supposed to stand. Hey, everybody's got little chalk marks, tell you where to stand so they get the best picture. And then one of the chaps, talks to a police officer who was there, and he says, did you have a briefing this morning about this stuff? He goes, well, I was expecting that, but we didn't have one. There was no briefing. Nothing. They talked as if it never happened. And he says, in fact, the skipper, the senior policeman, said it didn't happen. He said he didn't recognize any of the officers on his own patch. He'd never seen any of the members of the public that are exposed here. And, you're walking in your own neighborhood, you see the same people all the time. So now they're rolling out the airport-style security checkpoints all over the place for stop and search operations. And then they're resurrecting the anti-terrorism bill that would allow complete surveillance of everyone and everything online, just in case you want to look at Survival Blog. No wonder Cameron's got that look in his eye. So another guy's talking to someone who was in the area, and he said, the blood on the ground by the car only appeared after they took the guy's body away, because I guess somebody realized it. Hey, hey, they're catching on. They're catching on. Get some blood, spill it on the ground. Brilliant. So the communications data bill will probably be a sure thing in jolly old England because of that. Okay, show the little video here on the sign. Sign, sign, everywhere a sign.
Okay, so I went down to Woolwich today and I saw all the flowers and bouquets and a few photographers. I asked them if they believed everything that happened, and the guy just looked at me in disdain and didn't want to talk to me anymore. And then I met a couple of other guys, and I asked them if they believed everything that happened, and they were not so confident that they did. But obviously the whole place was full of people that did believe everything that's happened and don't question anything. Well, one guy said to me, you know, where are the bullet marks on the street? Something I never thought of. I don't know, maybe they didn't shoot down at the street. But anyway, one thing I did see is the lampposts where the car hit. And I have photographed it quite clearly. There's not even a scratch. And so I just leave it there. There isn't a scratch on the lamppost that I can see where the car had this humongous crash.
Isn't that amazing? It's like the super grass turf they had in front of the Pentagon. Plane crashes through, blows up, big fire, explosions. One blade of grass. I think they call the joke thing I saw about that was called the pentagrass. It's probably still around. Big graphic pictures on that baby. So why would they want to do? There's other things too, not just get all these terror things through. But even CNN had an article about Bush and Blair should be charged with war crimes over the Iraq invasion. That they acted unilaterally. They didn't have UN consent to this. They broke every rule in the book. Even as the UN said they broke these rules. And they want to go after them for this stuff. But you see, when you have a good attack like that, you're never going to drum up any public support in England because everybody got faked with the beheading to say, hey, they killed one of ours. Let's invade them again and do it again. So the Iraq abuse claims were coming on hard and strong in Britain. British troops abused and unlawfully killed civilians in Iraq. The High Court ruled. Lawyers representing 180 Iraqi civilians had called for a full public inquiry. The court stopped short of ordering such an inquiry because their Monsanto stock would go down. A series of further investigations into these allegations are expected. Allegations of sexual abuse, food and water, and sleep deprivation prolonged, solitary confinement, mock executions, and being denied clothes. So they set up the Iraq Historic Allegations Team, which is not independent, and they didn't do a whole lot. The UK is violating Article 2 of the European Convention on Human Rights, and nobody cares about that. It's been a rough thing, because everybody has the Hillary Clinton response. What difference does it make? It was in the past. That should be her campaign slogan, better than change and hope. Deaths in custody, at least 12, not being properly investigated. A grave cause for concern. They paid off 267 claims of mistreatment and unlawful detention for almost 17 million pounds. There's 134 cases still being negotiated. So one individual here is looking into the death of a 26-year-old hotel worker, Baha Musa, who was in military custody in September 2003. They talked about a corporate failure at the Ministry of Defense. I guess they're a corporation too. Using banned interrogation methods. The inquiry into what happened to that man cost 25 million pounds. And another chap by the name of El Sweety, his inquiry cost 17 million pounds. Well, that's probably more than enough payolas to pay off all the people who were abused anyway. Barack Obama says that he's fighting a just war. His drone use, even though it's shrouded in secrecy and they still have Guantanamo going, it's a just war. Well, there are no such thing as just wars. All wars are generally based on lies, deceit, and shenanigans, so they start with a completely fraudulent beginning. So they can't be just, by definition. This perpetual war that he's getting into is self-defeating. So why do it? Because we make money. He was heckled at one of his speeches to talk about this. So we got into a little bit of a discussion with the individual involved. While the security forces, muscled in, those people are probably going under an intense IRS investigation right now and being fed genetically modified food in some other kind of detention facility that we have no idea about. There's one thing about the world to a great extent is Jesus led prayers, not armies. Rome leads armies and not prayers. And you're not allowed to pray in school, so who's your boss? It's not Jesus, it's Rome. And that's why they kill and slaughter and say wars are just. So the lady who was in charge of the IRS before, former IRS commissioner, is now getting to be overseer. That's almost like you could have put that into a German army rank or something. Sarah Hall Ingram of the Obamacare Affordable Health Act. Isn't that fantastic? And then one of the little sidebar stories, was that they're trying to hang the disappearance and most likely death of Madeleine McCann on a former British soldier who's probably going to be set up as the fall guy if they can make it. But the Portuguese police don't want to look into this case in any way, shape, or form to make him the fall guy. So, all those highfalutin, Chipping Norton set that Cameron belongs to don't get held up for responsibility for this. How are we doing for time there, colleague? 2.5. 2.5. Oh, wow. Well, I guess we'll do some little things, and I don't know how we'll have to play with some of the other things, because we have the master plan. I've been reading the little book about the rat line and our good buddy Obama. You can show the little picture of our Führer, Obama. Because it all took Hitler to Indonesia. I'm almost finished this book. It's just chilling, the information that's in there. Chilling. And as I'm coming to the end, I'm going like, I think this guy's got the real Megillah here. I really do. Because when Hitler dies of a heart attack in 1970, that's the skull that turns out to be a woman's that the Russians had. And then the forensic analysis of the evidence doesn't match. We'll probably try to do this in more detail later. The fact that the doctor on the SS Hope, sounds like a campaign slogan, comes there, sees the guy, knows it's Hitler, goes into a lot of research into this. So 3 months after he dies, the Russians, at that time it's East Germany, go into East Germany where the grave of so-called Hitler is, dig up the body and burn it beyond, sawdust, so that no one can ever do any kind of identification again. Yuri Andropov was the head of the KGB then. He became premier of the Soviet Union, and by then the body turned to dust in Indonesia, and he declared Hitler was dead 20 years later. Amazing stuff. The whole world is an amazing place. It's an amazing place where you're involved with the greatest predators that have ever existed since the dawn of time. And you try to muddle through this as best you can, but you're always cheated and taken advantage of every way. But there is hope. The hope is we have a show here, Conspiracy Cafe, here on that channel with your host, George Fry, and we can change the paradigm. Actually, if we did, any of you spooks out there, if you're doing a false flag, you hire the guys here at that channel. We'll make sure there's real body parts, real blood. We'll go over everything down to the wire, man. I think a $10 million contribution on the donate button might get the juice and rolling. Don't you think there, Hugh? Yes, he's ready. He's got his fake blood and rubber gloves all ready to go. You hit the donate button for us to do good, and that's even better. We can show you how they do it to you every time, every way. We'll be here again, same that time, same that channel next week. Thanks for coming out.